Welcome to the #1 show and the source of truth for all things MedTech. Here, we reveal the secrets and stories behind the investments, science, and commercialization of the MedTech industry. Every week, we'll take you on a wild ride with the biggest names in the game, from entrepreneurs and investors who are shaking up the market to healthcare providers who are revolutionizing the way we think and practice medicine. So hold on tight and get ready for a journey like no other. This is the State of MedTech. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the show. So, very excited about this episode because this has been a long time coming, and we finally are starting to release more of these, which are our Presence Club series. Essentially, I want to interview top performers, people who have achieved the pinnacle in our industry on the sales side, which is, winning Presence Club, and distilling down and deconstructing what does it take for them to get to that point. Right? What habits do they have? What disciplines? What are their routines? Right? And their philosophy on career and success. So the first person actually just started our industry rather recently, just no more than barely 2 years ago, not even 2 years. So why did this guy get on my radar? Well, the gentleman who we're about to interview is Casey Green. He's a territory manager at CONMED, and the reason why he got on my radar is that there's a fantastic photo of him in a tuxedo giving a speech, and his father, who's a surgeon or a physician, posted about him and mentioned that his son won CONMED's Presence Club, and more specifically, it was his first year in with the advanced endoscopy division, which I can tell you is a very competitive division, and even more so, Casey competed in the Boston market. And so he exceeded his sales quota and took third in the nation, which is really impressive. Plus, I'll be honest with you, the fact that his father posted and then Casey commented, that really caught my eye, and I really love that. But it's a fantastic interview. I really enjoyed it, and I know that if you sit down and listen to the things that Casey shares, there's a lot of things that you can take action on here. So with that being said, a couple other announcements. One of the other things I'm releasing is for anybody who's listening. If you're listening to this episode on Presence Club winner, you're obviously a top performer. You're looking to get an edge. And so to reward you, you can start with my little LinkedIn mini upgrade course. As you know, I have a main program called the Medical Sales Network Effects Program, which really is an in-depth program and network on how to sell digitally and virtually at scale. But a good place to start is upgrading your LinkedIn, not only for your career, but also for your ability to sell to physicians, because more and more physicians are using LinkedIn. So to take advantage of this offer, just head to upgrademylinkedin.com. That's upgrademylinkedin.com and use the code President's Club. You're going to get a big discount. The mini course is usually about $300. You're going to get it for, I think, right under $100. I think like $97. So great offer there. The other thing I want to mention is that we have a new Instagram handle and TikTok handle as well. But I started a medical sales meme and I guess motivation and inspirational Instagram handle called All Hail Medical Sales. We also have a TikTok handle, and the handle's really blown up in the last couple of weeks. I think mainly because of some striker memes I posted, and then I've been posting a lot of stories. And I think the biggest thing is that what I love is my ability to directly connect with you guys, because on the Instagram stories, I'm able to do a lot of polls and have you guys ask me questions. So I've really been enjoying that. It's been a great way for me to take breaks during the day. So go follow All Hail Medical Sales on Instagram. You can follow it on TikTok, but Instagram has stories, so that's where I'm interacting with many of you. So go check that out. And now, let's get to our episode with Casey Green of CONMED, Presence Club winner, and the first one to kick off our Presence Club series, which reminds me, one last thing, sorry, I jumped the gun there. If you know somebody who's a Presence Club winner, if there's somebody in your organization where you're just dying to listen to their story, like how did they achieve one Presence Club, multiple Presence Club, send me a message on LinkedIn and let me know who that person is. Okay? Or feel free to tag them in any of my posts. Alrighty, now let's get to our episode with Casey Green of CONMED. Enjoy. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. So this is going to be kicking off our President's Club series. One of the reasons why we wanted to do this is, we have a lot of great leaders who come on, but more specifically, I wanted to talk to people who are actually living the life right now as a rep, specifically, living in the trenches and who can provide some like really good actionable advice to other reps out there. So first one to kick off is Casey Green. Casey Green got on my radar because I saw some posts on LinkedIn from ConMed about the people who won President's Club. He was one of them, so I want to have him on. So in this episode, I want to kind of talk to Casey about his background, but more specifically, get some actionable advice that you reps out there can take immediately and apply tomorrow. So hopefully you can get into that position, not only to get President's Club, but more importantly, what it means to get President's Club is the amount of people that you helped, in terms of the technology that you're pushing, and more specifically, the surgeons and the staff and the team that you supported to be successful. So Casey, thanks for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
Absolutely great, Omar. I appreciate you having me on. Really excited to, chat and reach out to your listeners about, some actionable steps they can take to hopefully walk the stage at the end of the year. So thank you.
Yeah, totally, man. Totally. So maybe a good place to start is like, what's your story, man? Like, what's your backstory rather?
Definitely. So went to University of Scranton out in Pennsylvania. I'm from Syracuse, New York. Son of a cardiovascular surgeon. So went to University of Scranton. Initially thought that I wanted to, get my doctorate and be a surgeon like my dad. Did pre-med all through undergrad. And then ultimately at the end of school, I just wanted to stop, furthering my education and just get right into the workforce and start making some money. So eventually ended up in tech sales, SaaS, kind of just doing some B2B stuff. And then ultimately kind of found my way into a hybrid medical sales role. So it was partly inside and partly going into accounts. That was more pharma based. And then most recently, luckily enough, I was able to get into ConMed's Advanced Endoscopic Technologies division, selling everything from suction tubing and disposables all the way to electrosurgical generators, and focusing on some more capital sales. But, it's been a journey, and I'm happy I ended up where I ended up. 27 right now, so I'm still pretty young in the industry and still learning a lot about it. But, like Omar said, I was able to find some success through, some actionable steps that, I'm consistently taking every day, and, was able and fortunate enough to win President's Club at ConMed this past January. So, and I can dive into a little bit more about what that means.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I'll say, like, something that stood out to me about your profile was, you were previously like in pharma, and to go from, for most people, it's actually more difficult to go from being a pharma rep to a med device rep. It's actually very difficult. It's very rare. How did you do that? I know we're going to get into like what it took to get President's Club, but for the people who are listening who are either trying to break in or especially they're a pharma rep, like, how did you do that?
Yeah, I mean, to your sentiment, Omar, it was definitely difficult because there is very much a preconceived notion among medical device sales that, pharma reps are considered lazy. So that's a tough kind of obstacle to overcome in its own right.
I'll reframe it. It's not that some of them are lazy, absolutely, but more so. And again, no offense to the pharma reps, but like,
Yeah,
it is what it is. When you're a pharma rep, for the most part, you're kind of a glorified caterer, because you're not in surgery. You're not like really influencing clinical decisions on the fly. So part of it is just really education, and the number one way to do those educational events is like, hey, let's do a lunch and learn. And so glorified caterer, nothing wrong with it. It takes that in itself is a skill. It really is, but that's the
right.
that's the that's the impression.
Exactly. And it's a different type of sale for sure. And I was in a hybrid role, like I mentioned. So some of it was even remote. We'd have these Viva meetings where we'd sit on, FaceTime on the computer with a doctor and just kind of walking them through a clinical study or something of that nature. So definitely trying to reposition that in interviews to medical device, directors was definitely an obstacle to overcome. But I think there's still a lot of parallels with regards to, you're discussing, how you can support them clinically. And I think at the end of the day, the crux of it, the purpose is somewhat the same. But I think the main difference is that, medical device is so much more hands-on. It's a tangible product you're selling. You're much more included from, beginning to end of the sale. You're part of that whole journey. And, a majority of the selling is done even after you sold the product. I think you've said this before, Omar. But that making sure that, implement your solution is implemented with the team, everybody feels comfortable with it, the doctor feels comfortable with it. Um, there's so much more. It's much more layered of a sale in medical device as opposed to pharma.
Yeah. Yeah. So in your interviews, like, you know, first of all, why do you think you got hired at ConMed?
Yeah, I had a manager that really took a shot on me, to be honest
Mm.
with you,
How did you get that?
and
How did you make that person do that?
absolutely. So I mean, it all started on LinkedIn, and that's where I'm such a big fan of you, Omar, because you decide to double down on LinkedIn and focus on that to get in touch with people that you need to get in touch with, and ultimately that's how I landed the job at ConMed. Um, I I reached out to the advanced surgical director, which is another division. I'm in advanced endoscopic technologies, and just said, "Hey, my name's Casey Green. If you guys don't have an opening right now, that's completely fine. When you do, I'm your guy." That just shows that you have the confidence. You know that you're going to get it done. As soon as you get that one shot, you're the guy that's going to make it. Make his life easier at the end of the day. Ultimately,
Hmm.
he didn't have an opening, so he shot my LinkedIn over to my now manager, and then had a conversation with her. Went through the interview process, and was lucky enough to get the job. But to answer your question, I think during the interview process, it was having actionable items as to what I'm going to do on my first day of the job. Making sure your 30, 60, 90-day plan is buttoned up to the T, having a structured plan as to, if you're walking into a cold account, how are you going to work that account? How are you going to leverage, your abilities to make that sale in a cold account? In a pre-existing account where you already have your products in, what's your plan for that account? I mapped all of this out.
Can you
So I
do you have that plan by any chance, like on hand? Can you walk us through that? Like, what did you? Because I think there's always everyone knows you should do a 30, 60, 90, right? But the
Right.
details as to what you do, and for those who a great book, somebody who I really admire actually a lot is Patrick McDavid. He wrote a great book called Your Next Five Moves, which is the premise is all on chess. His thing, and I totally agree with this, is that the sequence in which you do things is extremely important. Just like in chess, like you can move the same pieces that I do, but if I do it in a different sequence, that'll determine whether I win the game or not. So what was your sequence for the 30, 60, 90? Because that was pretty much the crux of what got you to be successful. Because again, you've been at ComEd for a year, barely a year and a half. You won President's Club, right?
Right.
That's rare. So what did that
100%.
look like?
Yeah. Well, I think my 30, 60, 90. I formed a generalized plan, and then obviously you can kind of make it more specific for your situation and the company that you're applying for. But I boiled it down to 9 steps, and I've got it written out here. I'm looking at it right on my computer.
Beautiful. Let's
Um,
go through those 9 steps.
So for this first step, it's document the customer journey. You want to identify and map all touch points throughout the buying process. Okay, that's very general ground floor, but again, you can kind of churn this in like whatever product, like if you're applying to Striker and they're selling that product, you can kind of interweave that in to this pitch to your manager. But if you show them these steps and say, hey, listen, this is what I'm going to do the first day I get in there, managers will definitely appreciate that because they want action. They want to see that you're taking the necessary steps to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
So document customer journey. Number one. Two, identify and prioritize.
Mm-hmm.
Define your target customer profile and qualify potential buyers. Okay, that's the second step. Find decision makers and influencers. Who is the ultimate buyer? Who can be your product's champion to influence the buying process? Okay. Who's going to be that person that, you're very close to and that believes in you and trusts you and understands that your product's of value to, the OR, the endoscopy suite, wherever you're selling into. Next one, discovery. Uncover your prospects' needs and goals to inform how to align the opportunity to your product and solutions. So understand what the pain point is. Figure out what you're solving with your product. Is it they need better patient outcomes in this regard? Do they need to be more efficient in some areas of their practice? Identifying those points and making sure to drive them home. when you're speaking to someone clinically. And then raise awareness. Prescriptive selling is a process of offering a specific solution supported by a specific rationale. You got to give them reasoning. You got to help them understand why they're bringing on your product. Nurture, work to establish credibility and earn personal trust with every interaction. Make sure the physicians know your intent. Make sure that they understand you're here to help. Make sure the team knows you're here to help, and make sure they know that you're reliable as well and you're going to follow up on what you say you're going to do. And then present the solution. This is to create customized presentations depending upon attendees. So, you want to make sure everybody knows about your product, knows what it's going to do, and then follow up and close post-sale, which is probably the most important. That's implementing your technology and just making sure at the end of the day you're an asset, and you can answer any questions that they may have. And I know I just ranted for a little bit there, but I mean,
No, not
that's
at
the
all.
type of
And
specificity it takes, right?
And real quick, can you go through one more time just the 9 steps and just list them out like step 1, step 2, step 3. So these are your 9 steps in terms of what your 30, 60, 90 day look like. So run it through real quick, steps 1 through 9. If you can just read them off one more time.
Yep. So number 1, document the customer journey. Okay. This is your Salesforce. You're taking your own notes of your accounts, all of that.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt. Just run through the steps like 1 through 9.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Number 1, document customer journey. Number 2, identify and prioritize. Number 3, find decision makers and influencers. Number 4, discovery. Number 5, raise awareness. Number 6, nurture. Number 7, present solution. Number 8, follow up. And number 9, close and post sale.
Got it. So let me ask you this. So it's a great framework. And again, in my opinion, a lot of times when people look for the secret to success, in any industry, any position, a lot of times it's just doing the basics like really damn well. Like it's nothing special, but when you do the basics very, very well, that's when you're able to get like to more advanced level strategies, right? But if you can't do the foundational stuff well, if you don't even have a foundation, then like what makes you think you can do advanced stuff better? In that list that you just shared with me, what do you think was the one step that you put the most amount of time and focus on developing and refining? And is that the step that you think that a lot of your peers skip?
Absolutely. Close and post sale, Omar. And I just want to disclaim this. I've been in the job for a year and 8 months. I've been in medical device sales for a year and 8 months. So my experience isn't that extensive, but this is one thing that I am absolutely sure of, that will yield more results for you and will make you more successful in this industry, is the post sale. It's easy to sell a physician on a product. It's easy to sell, a nurse manager on, like a general GI or a product, and then, leave the hospital and say, oh, okay, that's a good win for that account. I'm going to leave that there. It's a whole nother thing to follow up, make sure you're there for in-services, make sure if the doctor gives you a call about, hey, case, I've got a complicated case. I just want you to get some extra eyes on this. Do you mind if you pop in? Those extra actions to, head into an account at 6 p.m. because that doctor's having a tough case with your product, to do an extra in-service with the team to show them that, this is how you use this product and this is how easy it is after you make the sale. That's what differentiates you from all the other reps, because all the other reps are closing that account and then leaving and saying, my work here is done. I'm going to move on and try to find another account. So I think it's showing the team that you care, showing the team that, you care about the patient, and showing them that you're a valuable asset even after the sale, even when it's not perhaps self-serving at that point.
That makes a lot of sense, man. And what I was going to say is that, I think that great salespeople, so like I bought a car for my wife actually just last night. And
wow.
Yeah. So, but the sales guy just did a phenomenal job because the sale was already done, but the things that he did after the sale, like while we're doing the paperwork, is like really what made the difference. And I'm going to talk about that, like just the way he treated my wife and I, the service and everything. We forgot something and we did a trade in. We forgot something tiny in the car, and he could have just like not worried about it. Send us a text today. He's like, hey, I'll be here all day. Feel free to pick, like little things like that. And I think the other thing is that when it comes to selling, and we're going to get into the more specifics of winning President's Club, is you're one screw up away from losing your account. Like, and I'm sure actually that's probably how you converted some accounts, which is your follow up, even with an account you don't have, is everything, because it's just that one moment where your surgeon, a nurse manager, the director of surgery is not happy about something. And if your competitor just by coincidence follows up that day, it's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to use you today. That's all it takes, right? That's all it takes.
You drop the ball in one area or you're not like available at that moment. Guess how many other companies have that same exact product where a surgeon can just be like, oh, Casey didn't make it today. All right, let's just try this one out. And then what happens to that? It just evaporates because of that one mistake. So, as this job's tough. Medical device sales is not an easy occupation. But if you dig deep and you have that desire to be that person for those accounts and for those physicians and for those hospitals and those patients, the world's your oyster. You just have to make that commitment and you have to do it consistently.
I'll say something, and I think you'll appreciate this. There is, because we talked before we got on the show about, there's a lot of people who are hitting you up like, hey, I want to get into med device sales. How do I do it? All these things. There is a parallel between the way you're able to make your way into the industry and how you're able to be successful in the industry, which is the people who do not make it in, they send messages, which I get them all the time. It's all about them. It's like, hey, what do I got to do? I want to get in, me. It's not about the other person. And it's the same thing on the sales side. The worst salespeople in this industry, they just focus on pestering the surgeon. Like, hey, when you get, can you use my product? Can you use my product, versus figuring out like, what kind of value can I add to this person's like day and this message that might get attention, that might actually, provide some kind of value. And I think salespeople complicate this all the time. They're like, oh, but Omar, like, my product does this. Or I'm like, okay, you're a human being. Go outside. Like, salespeople are really industrious when they have to. So like regulatory and legal will say, do not make this claim about this product. But salespeople will use their personal email and it's like send a clinical paper like, hey, you should see what we did with this product, right? So on the same token, finding ways to send a doctor something outside of your product and productize yourself, I think, is key. How much of that did you do in this role where you provided value outside of just the regular product and service? Even if it's just like check in and be like, hey, hope your week's going well. Is there anything I can do to help? Like what kind of things did you do add to create that amazing customer service?
Right. I think that's an excellent point. And, kind of like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, Matthew Ray Scott emphasizes this. It's like providing value to the physician and basically giving something away for free before you ask for any business or talk about product or anything like that. And this absolutely disarms the physician to think like, oh, immediately this guy just wants to hit his number. He wants to make this sale. He wants to, he's just focusing on his goals and what he wants. So I think it's such a big part of connecting with your customers and your physicians and your nurse managers in these hospitals is understanding and putting your best foot forward with how can I help? How can I help, create more efficiencies on your team? Where can I identify some problems that you're having where I can bring in a product and help solve that or make your life easier at the end of the day? Or make your patient's life easier. There's just so many angles that you can take. And if you take the necessary steps to, not focus on your own personal goal as a sales rep, which I get your area directors breathing down your neck for, new business, making sure that you're on track for hitting quota. Everything's fighting against the urge to just be like, hey, how can I help? But I promise you, at the end of the day, if you come at it with that angle and you come at the physicians with, hey, I'm a person and I want to learn about, how I can help you, then at the end of the day, you're going to be walking this. At the end of the year, you're going to be walking the stage, and all the accolades will come from that. Because at the crux of your business, you're looking to help, and people realize that. Physicians realize that. They understand um, where your objectives lie. So I think you hit the nail on the head, Omar. It's making them, making the physician feel like you're a person and you're here to help. And I think, me spending a lot of time on that up front really helped me walk the stage in
Got it.
January.
And let's get into the details of that. So at ConMed, like what is the criteria to win President's Club, and more importantly, let's talk your numbers. Like what were your numbers, like at least what you could share, and what is it like? Let's start with the criteria. What does it take to make President's Club at ConMed, and then what was the criteria that you hit?
Right. Well, our President's Club is based on growth in your territory, so that's like net new business. To be honest, I roughly know how that's calculated, but I just want to keep that kind of ConMed based. But it's
Sure.
based
So it's
on, yeah,
mainly growth related. So would you say that's growth in new surgeons, growth in more cases, or both?
So we're advanced endoscopic technology, so we focus on therapeutic endoscopists for the most part,
Ah, okay.
uh, and general GI physicians as well. But yeah, it's new products, new physicians using our products, or new hospitals even
So
that bring on our.
here's a good question. Did you sit down and spend time and say, okay, for me to, I know that when you were looking at the year, you weren't thinking like, oh, what do I do to hit President's Club? Winning, this is the one thing that I tell sales reps. The awards and stuff, it's a byproduct of your main goal, which is to do a really good job and grow the business, right?
Right.
Not the other way around. There's some reps who are just focused on like getting a promotion and accolade, and I don't know how to say it, they all suck. I've never met a single rep or marketing person who was chasing after title or awards who had any of my respect ever. Not just in med device, all industries. There's plenty
You
of
just know what
there's
type of guy they are,
yeah, dude, like there's plenty of these people on LinkedIn, especially from the SaaS industry, like SaaS marketers, or just from the post. I'm like, man, this person is not like worth anything, because all they're doing is just chasing titles and like, hey, look at me, look at the cool thing that I did, versus actually growing the
Right.
business. So when you sat down to actually evaluate things, did you make a conscious decision, say, you know what, I'm actually better off growing utilization, or did you say, I'm better off getting some new customers, or was it a
Right.
mix? How did you make that determination?
Right. Mix. And it definitely depends on the territory that you're working with, right? I walked
Sure.
into a territory that was pretty self-sufficient, not with, I'm smacking quota every single year and I don't have to do anything. Not near that at all. But there was, a very even 50-50 split where I had the ability to grow a lot of business and there was places where I could grow it. But there was also, I mean, I'm in the Boston market. There's a ton of other companies out here that are chomping at the bit to take the business that I do have. So I think it's also important to, play defense in accounts, but also, in order to get the President's Club, you got to be, kind of more hunter oriented and go after those accounts and help, bring in new business in those accounts. So it's definitely a 50-50 split. And I think me spending time kind of more on the hunting role and kind of growing my business out. Um, I think that's what ultimately helped me out at the end of the year. But and
Mm.
again, Omar, you have a pretty extensive bag, so there's a lot of different ways that I could sell. I
How
could
many how
everything.
many SKUs do you carry,
Oh,
roughly?
geez, I mean, everything from like suction tubing to generators,
So we
way more,
talking more or less than 20 SKUs?
more, way
Oh
more than
wow,
20.
more or less than 100?
I think more, yeah,
Oh
because we
wow,
do patient
okay.
care, so we do ECGs, defib pads, all of those patient care items, GI, general GI, a bunch of stuff. So.
So the reason why I mentioned that is that once you have different SKUs, like it becomes easier to like little by little lose business here and there. Especially like this is the balance is, how do you go about picking up new business while again protecting what you already have, right? Because what you don't want to do is put all this time and focus on acquiring new business, and it's like, hey, you acquire it, but then you're like, oh, I lost 10% or 20% of my existing business because of these reasons. So during your week, did you have specific days where you said, hey, on these days I'm prospecting, on these days I'm servicing customers? How did you divide your time out? Because at the end of the day, you can only control your daily activity, right? So how did you divide your time? How did you structure that?
Absolutely. And especially when you have so many SKUs, you have to really budget your time, to the nth degree. But I think for the most part, for me personally, I'm spending 3 days out of the week, with physicians in cases, and making sure that, my products being used, and make sure that they feel comfortable with my product, and making sure I'm having those interactions with my accounts and my customers. And then the other 2 days, I'm going into accounts cold, or trying to drum up new business in accounts that we don't have that much access to, or we don't have a lot of business in. So that's like my kind of rough framework. Obviously, it changes week by week, um, but 3 days mostly, in the procedure rooms, and 2 days out on the roads.
Got it. Got it.
Hmm.
You mentioned your step one was what was step one of your framework?
Document the customer journey.
Document the customer journey. Okay, Casey, you don't have this stuff memorized. You got to have this stuff memorized,
I
man.
know,
You're gonna go
man.
on.
It's been a
Yeah.
while.
No, it's all good. So when it comes to the documentation side, like, um, what avenues did you use to profile these people, whether it's your existing customers or more importantly, the accounts you're going to go after? Because obviously, I hope, like, especially you listen to the show a lot, so I'm sure that you do this based on what you've said, which is what did you do to profile and understand the customers ahead of time so that when you talk to them, like, you had a fruitful conversation, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think, you've talked about this a lot, reaching out to somebody, and like them not knowing anything about you. And I've heard, Jacob McLaughlin talk about it too. It's like, if you hop on the phone with someone, you better have like knowledge about your customer. You better have, points to bring up. You better be dialed in before you get in front of them. Other than that, it's just a waste of time, and your customer can realize that. So I think, ConMed has a bunch of applications that we utilize to get a better understanding of our customers. I think going on their LinkedIn page, and seeing kind of where they went to medical school, where they do their advanced fellowship, their residency, understanding, who are their peers, and understand like what they're using, looking at their roster on the hospital page as well. Just get a better understanding of your customers, so that way when you meet up with them, hobbies. And sometimes you can find hobbies even if you just do like a Google search on them. Like, you can understand like what they're doing for fun, and so it's an easy way to have like talking points with physicians that you might never have met before, or like have
Mm-hmm.
no connection with. So I think understanding that, and then utilizing the team too. Like, if you're an accountant and you haven't talked to a doctor yet, but you know the nurse manager, the techs, the nurses, like making sure you're tight with them, and learning more about the physician that way, so you know what to talk about, the kind of ins of the hospital, what they're struggling with. So there's a lot of creative ways that you can kind of understand your customers a little bit better, to have more fruitful conversations with them. Is that what you're
Totally.
asking, Omar?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's perfect. And something I want to touch on because, you know, uh, there, I'll quote my good friend Christopher Lochhead. For those who are marketers, they know who that is. He's a legendary marketer. One of his quotes that he says is like, thinking about thinking is the most important thinking you're going to do. And so one of the things I want to touch on is like in sales, everybody does this thing about like, not everybody. Let me back that up, but like in general, like like learn your customers' hobbies and stuff, right? Some people are proactive about it. Some people they do fly by the seat of their pants, and when they wait till they're in the physician's office and they look on what's on the wall. The question is though, which I'm going to answer. I'm not going to put you on the spot here. Why even do that? And for the young reps who are listening, the human brain has not evolved to separate things. And so a lot of times, like a good way to change your behavior is if you hate doing something, do it while in the presence or doing something that you love. Like let's say there's some thing like show that you don't like to watch or whatever. Watch that show with somebody you really like a lot, and those things blend together, right? And so when it comes to talking to a physician about their hobbies, their interests, and everything, the reason why that's important, because if you just go in purely talking about business, their guards are going to be up, they're going to be more tense and everything. When you talk about like their clinical interests, their hobbies, any of these things, right? A little dopamine is released. They start to relax a little bit more. So then the conversation of business and the hobbies and everything, it all kind of blends together and becomes a lot easier to get insights as to what they're looking for. And more importantly, how you can get their business, right? It makes it a lot easier, you know? So like when you talk to a physician for the first time, like how do you usually like to open the conversation? I know it's gonna vary depending on who it is, but like some of the best prospecting conversations you had, how did you prospect and get the meeting? How did you get it started? Like, give us a little insight onto that.
Yeah, I want to preface this by saying the first couple of times I talked to a physician, not good. And I'm sure if you're going to get into the industry, you're going to learn that very quickly too.
Hey,
Your first
but
couple times,
that's a rite of passage, man. I always tell people, I'm like, you're not a real rep unless you've gotten kicked out of an OR at least once or had like a few really bad conversations. Like that's a rite of passage. Let's start there. How did those bad conversations, like what happened?
You know what? Honestly, I mean, it's nerves at the beginning of it. Like you're going up. I'm a 27-year-old guy, right? And I'm going up to a physician who's been practicing medicine at a high level, because these are advanced
longer than you've been alive.
longer than I've been alive, right? So they look at me. At least this is like what my insecurities are projecting. They look at me and say, what is this 27-year-old kid going to tell me about my practice that I don't already know? Right. And that's where a lot of like those beginning interactions, maybe I was a little bit on my heels, a little bit nervous, a little bit in my head. Like our job is tough. We're supposed to go up to physicians who have decades of, years of experience and to challenge them on their ways of their practice. Like that's just the nature of the beast. So those first couple times were definitely a little sketchy, but I definitely learned what not to do and how to go about it. And
let's start there. What should you not do?
Right. Don't panic. Don't panic, right? Speak with conviction. Be confident. The information that you have, you better be buttoned up on your product when you speak to a physician too. Like you better know everything about it super quick. You should be in front of the mirror, boom, boom, boom. Just so if they do ask you a question, you can say it with conviction. I think that's it. You've said this before, Omar, like speaking with conviction and being confident in those situations is everything, because then they respect you more. And they begin to see you as an asset as opposed to a sales rep,
Yeah.
I mean? And
that's a great point, man. I mean, look, like just to your point, like again, like, the one thing that I would encourage, like younger reps to, well, not just younger, any rep, because there's plenty of people I know who are like at the executive level and they don't even do this, is to think about like, why do I need to do that? So everybody, like, again, everybody knows you should know your product really well, but why? The reason why is that subconsciously, if you're talking to a physician and you can't speak confidently to your product and talk about like all aspects of it, what makes you think you're going to be able to talk about other things unrelated to your product, which is really where the behavior change and persuasion happens, right? So it's kind of like, again, theme of this conversation, key to success, your first path to President's Club is like, do the basics really good. And that requires a lot of study, a lot of practice. So you mentioned practicing in front of the mirror. Like, how do you practice, like knowing your products and procedure guidelines?
Yeah, I mean, just rigorous study. I mean, just taking in all the content about your product like a rabid dog and making sure you know it front and back. And then also troubleshooting, like in your own head and in front of the mirror, like, what if this happens? What if the physician asks this question? Just running through all of those obstacles and making sure that you have an answer for it is critical, because they have so much going on in their day. They're using so many different products. They're not thinking about the nuances of your product. But you know what you can do? You can do that. So if you go into smaller spaces and understand, okay, this thing could go wrong in this, and the question could be from the physician is this. Have that answer ready to go. And then as soon as they do ask that question when you're in the middle of a procedure, you can say that confidently and, And that's where you gain the trust from that physician, is because, in a pinch, Casey knew his product inside and out, and he was able to give me the information that I needed, and ultimately it helped the patient. And that's where you gain that physician's trust, I think, is in those moments.
Yeah, no, super, super, super valuable advice. When you start off and you were studying, how would you study? Did you make flashcards? Did you summarize notes? Like, how did you go about studying?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at like the brochures, studying the brochures, yeah, writing things down, just like you would in college, however you study. But I think actually studying is the key differentiator. You can have a long day on the road, cold calling accounts when you first start, doing introductions and everything like that, and you can have a long day driving around your territory. You get back to your apartment at 6 p.m. The key differentiator is studying your product until you go to sleep, and that's going to be
Mm.
the first part of the job. Is you're going to be grinding from the moment you get up all the way until you go to sleep, and putting in those critical hours when you first start will help you be successful in this job down the road once you get going. It's actually doing it. And me and you talked about this, Omar, at the beginning of the podcast. It's like all these steps are out here. All the advice is out here. You're dropping gems out here. Matthew Ray Scott, Stu Brandon, you guys are all dropping free gems. But the differentiator is you can consume all this content and understand it. You're like, okay, oh, that makes sense. But putting it into action is where the money's made. So
There,
I think,
there we go. You do listen to the show, I could tell.
oh,
And
of
again,
course,
like, I mean, for those who are watching on YouTube or let's say Spotify, I do these shows from my like legendary library, which is really what like my number one goal, number one like personal hobby and goal, which is just building this epic library. And I tell people all the time, like, look, I buy a lot of books. If you read a book and the byproduct of your learning is knowledge, like you're a fool.
right.
But if the byproduct of your learning is action, it's how you become rich. Simply put, people get caught off guard when I say it, but it's really true. And again, like it's like if you look at stoicism is a real big thing with sales reps, right? A lot of a
Mhm.
lot of people read. Well, they'll read if they're millennials or Gen Z, they'll read Ryan Holiday, but some actually
Right.
read the text. Doesn't matter. I like Ryan Holiday; it's cool. But what philosophy really teaches you is not necessarily how to think; it's really how to act, right?
Right.
It's a set of actions that you take. So what do you feel in the year that you won President's Club? What was the single biggest, like, if we think about your sales, like being a salesperson is like it's literally like being an athlete. You got four quarters. It's very very much like sports analogies exist for it for a reason. So are you a basketball or football fan or neither?
Lacrosse fan.
A lacrosse
I can't
fan?
be I can't be a basketball fan. I'm a short guy.
Man, I should know more about lacrosse. I do like it, but if
Come on,
if you
Omar.
well, I guess no matter what sport you're into, what was the like game defining moment of the year that like started to generate a lot of momentum for you? Like what was there a key moment in the year where you got a specific win and you started rode that win's momentum to get other wins? Like was there a moment like that throughout the year?
Absolutely, 100%. It pretty definitive too. I was at one
What
of my accounts.
what quarter, like let's like take us back
Yeah,
to that day.
middle of the year. I think it was like March, middle of March. I think probably kind of the same time frame we're at now. I was just starting off. This is like my first fully ramp year where I'm qualified to potentially win President's Club. Um, I've got an account where they already utilize our stent or biliary stent. And it was a really difficult case. There was a lot going on. The physician was stressed. The nurses and techs were stressed. We were all kind of trying to figure out what the next move was. Um, and the physician got to this point, and I was able to help this physician, and instruct them a way to get the procedure done in a well done way where the patient was safe, and everything went really smooth. But I could tell everybody's really stressed out in that moment. I pointed out a few things and kind of coached them through it. And then at the end of the procedure, everybody just kind of like one by one came up to me and said, like, thank you, Casey. Really appreciate you were here. And that was kind of a really big moment for me because I felt like I was really in the room providing asset and being an asset and providing a lot of help to the team so they felt more comfortable and so the patient ultimately felt better. Um, and that was just kind of like an unlock for me is like what I'm capable of doing. Like I played a part in helping that patient. And it was a really cool feeling. And I kind of rode that and kind of kept that mentality because I've never felt that before. I mean, I've done a couple months into medical device sales and I finally got to feel like, you know, I was an important role in that room. And I think going for that feeling yield so many more results down the road as far as success to president's club and hitting quota and being successful as a medical device sales rep is,
Mm,
again, to go back to it, is like showing that you're patient focused, and you want to help support the patient and whatever it takes. And what it takes is knowing your product really well and knowing how to help in that room. And I think that specific procedure, where I felt like I really made a difference, changed the trajectory of my career at ConMed for sure.
wow.
And then from there, just chasing that feeling.
That's amazing. It's an amazing story. Let me ask you this, which is, you're a young guy. You just started off. So like you hit that like what month 3 Q1. So Q1 of your first medical sales job at a new company. A lot of people would have just been like, they would have gotten comfortable. It sounds like you doubled down. How did you make sure not to get comfortable after a win like that? 'Cause that's rare, by the way. Like,
Right.
if you do a good job, like the physician might say a good job, and everything, but for people like individually to come up and like say thank you, right? How
Right.
did you? Why didn't you get comfortable after that?
You're right. It could have been easy to, especially, in the account where you win like a ton of business. It's easy, just kind of like I said before, if you, hit a home run in an account and, they're placing these big stocking orders where you can just feel like you can rest on your laurels, then, you know, at that point, I kind of take the positive feedback loop approach to those type of things where it's like, okay, this is a huge one. Let's look for the next opportunity for a lot of business. Um, and, and if you become satisfied in this job, I don't know if medical devices sales is for you. You know what I mean? Like this job is for hungry people that continue wanting to be successful and continuing to grow out the account no matter kind of where your territory's at. So if you don't have that kind of drive to want to continue to be successful and continue to get wins in your territory, then maybe medical device sales is not for you. Um, but kind of after that, you're right. Like I was chasing the feeling of wanting to be an asset in the room and wanting to be helpful to hospitals and the team. So I think the reason why I didn't become complacent was because of that. I love that feeling. I love feeling like I'm a part of the team and I'm providing value to the physicians and staff. So I wanted to chase that feeling.
That's what do you feel like a lot of reps, at least, because aside from your own peers, like you interact with other people in other companies, do you feel like a lot of reps get comfortable and that's where the mistakes happen?
Um, yeah, yeah. I do bump into a lot of other reps, and I think your company sometimes can make you feel a little bit more complacent than you are. Some accounts have like contracts for certain companies, so sometimes it's a little bit more account management and just being in that account. Um, ConMed has a lot of room for growth, so I think I definitely don't have that feeling. There's always every account. I think there's an opportunity for me, so I appreciate that about my job. But definitely, reps do get complacent. Like if they have a lot of business or they walk into a territory with a ton of business, like the complacency is 100% there. But um, I think you're doing yourself. It's just the situation that you're walking into for some reps, and I'm sure they're told that when they get the job. But I you're selling yourself short if you don't look for a role where you want to continue to grow. Because I mean, it helps you personally. Just wanting to keep succeeding and keep fighting.
Hmm.
Um, or business. I think it's a challenging job and a challenging position to be in, but I think there's a lot of personal growth in that.
Along with that, I mean, it's not part of these things. It's not like all sunshine and rainbows. So, what were some of the things that went wrong this year that changed you for the better?
Yeah. Geez, where can I start? I mean, medical device sales is definitely hard. So you're working more, like work life balance is definitely tough. You know what I mean? And my dad and I both kind of struggle with that. Just my dad being a surgeon, and we're both kind of
Oh, what kind
workers.
of surgeon is your dad?
He's a cardiovascular surgeon,
Oh,
so
got nice.
doesn't have too much time on his hands,
That's a
that
rough.
guy.
It's
But
a rough gig. Yeah,
yeah, well, your
yeah.
dad's a surgeon too,
He's a
right?
yeah. He's a general surgeon. Yeah, but yeah.
So you
See,
probably will.
yeah. I'll tell you, man. Like my take on work life balance. So on one side, I don't believe in it, but I believe in. I need to come up with a better way to call it. But like I think of like work life harmony, right?
Mm,
So when I'm doing work, I go hard. I go hard at
right.
work, like Kobe Bryant hard. Like I'm very
Mm,
aggressive. I'm extremely competitive about it. Um,
right.
and then I take the same mentality to my personal life. So like
Right.
me as a husband, as a father, I go really hard on that. I'm very hard. Like I grade myself harder than anybody else. And so every week I think of myself, I posted a post today about my son and he like walked. And so not
Saw
everybody,
it.
yeah, thanks, man.
Congratulations,
Thank
man. That's
you.
awesome. So
So
cool.
the point of the post is like you don't have to work from home to have these like amazing moments with your family, but you have to put a lot of effort into making sure that like, hey, when I'm on family time, I'm 100% family time, and I'm not perfect. There's a lot to be desired there. Um, but I think like that's the most important thing, which is like whatever you choose to be doing, whether it's like you're with your family, with not like I know people who, you know, they spend a lot of time with their family. It's not good quality because they're not there, they're not checked in, they're kind of checked
Yeah,
out, or they're not taking yeah. And so like I think there's something there to be said about that. But
that could be a whole nother podcast, Omar.
no,
Honestly,
seriously.
it's about being present. You know what I mean? I completely agree with you, and I think you've got it the exact right way. Is just maintaining um, and being where you're at when you're experiencing it. When you're with your kid, you're fully there. You're locked in. You're experiencing that moment. And then when you're working, you're locked in there too. You're getting
Yeah.
after it and focusing on what we're doing presently.
And I was gonna say, I was like, I know we're coming close to the hour, so I'll be mindful of your time. But I'm okay on my time. I can roll past it, but you get to keep rolling just for a little bit more. We're gonna have a good time, and
Absolutely.
I guarantee you the
Yeah,
audience is enjoying this.
of
Um,
course.
when I was a rep, my one of my first managers, Sean Stewart, told me he's like, things are going to go wrong, but things go wrong not when you're on point. They go wrong when you start getting comfortable. Right, that was both
Mm,
Sean Stewart and then my other manager, Jason Carl. Um, so how important is it in terms of your level of presence and focus, like when you're covering things, like have it's very easy to get distracted, like you're thinking about your next case, you're thinking about your prospecting something, you know what do you do to stay on point in the room?
absolutely. That is a perfect question. I mean, when you have so I mean, I'm in Boston, right? So my accounts are Boston Metro all the way down to Cape Cod, essentially. So I have most of southern Massachusetts. There's a decent amount of hospitals there, right? And we do have, ConMed has a decent amount of business in the endoscopy suites of most of these hospitals. So, calls, emails, they can come pretty frequently, even when I'm in accounts. Um, but I think to your point, Omar, it's so critically important to, I mean, very similar to like we were talking about, like when you're with your kid, you're focused on being with your kid. When you're working, you're focused on working. When you're in an account with a team, with a physician in a procedure room, you are fully there in all aspects. You can't be, obviously if another account calls with something urgent, then you can deal with it, but you can kind of field that and understand the situation while you're in it. But I think it's so critically important to show the team that, you're spending time with them in their hospital, in their endoscopy suite. Then you should give them the time of day to focus on their products and figure out, solutions for them and just be very present with them to show that, when you're there, you're an asset. You're not getting pulled in different directions. Because I mean, if you're walking around the endo suite on your phone, calling other accounts or like calling other reps and stuff, I mean, that says something, and that's why I think it's so critically important.
Yeah, I'm happy you said that because, like, I'll tell you, the details matter, man. The optics matter, And I think, for me, again, I made and I should probably record an episode about all the mistakes that I made as a rep.
Mhm.
But like one of those things is like optics, and something that could be like very, benign, very subtle and innocent is it could be perceived the wrong way. So like being on the phone, not being present, like, it says something, right?
Right.
And so I think like putting a lot of time and effort into thinking like, how's this going to look to my account? Right. I think is super important because, again, especially, in the world of selling a lot of SKUs and everything where, ComEd has great products, right? But there are other companies that also have really good products. And so at that point, a lot of it is just pretty much based on emotion. People, the surgeon, the physician, the nurse, these are all human beings. So a lot of times they're not sitting there and making logical decisions just like anybody else. A lot of it's emotional based. Actually, if for those who listen to the show, every decision is emotional. Every single one of them,
Regular, yeah, 100%. I mean, you can tell when you pull up to a physician, walk up to them, walk into the endo suite, you can see what their face does, and it's pretty obvious whether they like you or not, or they're excited to see you. So, I mean, that's a key differentiator. It's like make sure you're and the staff too. You get the same feedback. It's like when you walk into that endo suite, are they smiling or are they running away?
Mm.
And you're doing
What
something wrong. They're running away.
throughout the year, like, did you receive any constructive criticism that hurt, that was painful, but it made you better? And if so, from who is it from, and what did it do for you?
I think my manager, my manager, I mean, she never really like made me feel like really bad, but she holds me accountable as to, how to be a better rep. Like I said, I came into this industry really green, and she has been phenomenal in
What's her
helping me.
name?
Ali Laketo, Allison.
Ali. Okay, got it.
Shout out Ali.
What
But
what was a moment? What's something that she told you that kind of it stung a little bit, but it made you better?
oh yeah, she came to Boston because she had some meetings up here. We have an office. ConMed has an office up here, and she was like, "Hey, do you mind if I stop by and we go into an account together?" I was like, "Sure, absolutely. I'll take you into an account. We can kind of just do some things, and it'll be good to go." That would be a good time. She stops by the account, and then before we go into the endo suite, she pulls me aside, and she says, "What are we doing here?" And then I kind of tell her like, hey, yeah, I just wanted to get in front of the doc. I didn't really have a good reason, right? Like kind of just first started. I was like, hey, like maybe we could talk about this product or like get in front of this physician. And she's like, what are we doing here? I'm like, like we could talk to this doctor, we could talk. And she's like, no, what are we doing here? And she just kept asking that. And it seems so easy, and it seems like you wouldn't get anything from that. But I really did, because at the first part of this job, I thought, walking into an account and like talking to doctors about my product, without really establishing interest or understanding what problem I'm solving and asking myself all these questions before I go to an account to actually push the envelope for new business. I thought just going in there and, talking with the team and, talking with the doctors was going to get the job done. But I didn't really have any specific objectives like written down, boom, 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 to get things done. And she helped me realize that, and is continually to like hold me accountable to do just that. And that's Allie is 75% of the reason why I was in President's Club this year, because she consistently holds me accountable to
What was the other 25%?
Grit and grind, consistency.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no, there's, it's funny, like, there's something needs to be said about consistency. Like, again, like for me, having been in sales, and I moved into marketing because I saw marketing as like sales at scale, not like what most marketing is in our industry, which, I'm going to AAOS, the orthopedic conference next week. Most marketing in the industry is just like product managers who do marketing as a hobby. It's not really sales related. But anyways, I remember meeting. You're probably old enough to remember. Do you remember? Men's Warehouse.
Oh yeah, come
You,
on, Omar.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
The original founder, the guy with the beard, who's like, you're gonna like the way you look with the deep voice.
yeah, yeah.
I met him. I was at an event and I met him backstage and I asked him because I was like, man, this guy's really good at marketing because like he built Men's Warehouse. I was like, hey, his name was George Zimmer or Zimmerman. It's like, so I was like, hey, great to meet you. I was like, what's your best advice for marketing? And I'll never forget what he said. He's like, has nothing to do with creativity. Like marketing is not about creativity and everything, which when I was a young guy, I was shocked. I was waiting for something special. That's what all advice. It's like the receiver is expecting something magical. And in reality, it's just like rooted in practicality. And his thing is like great marketing is all about consistency and persistence over time. That's it. I think that's what,
Spot.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think your path to
So
President's Club is like doing successful actions repeated consistently over time. Would you agree with that?
absolutely, and it's consistency every day. Like, there's days you don't want to get out of your bed and like have to bang around to all these different accounts and not check off all these things, but you gonna do it regardless. Like, you have to. If you have these like goals and you want to achieve these things, it's all about consistency. It's all about doing the things that you don't want to do and seeking out that uncomfort and, approach and doing those things, over and over and over again until you start to understand that it yields results. And it's battling through that where I feel like a lot of people can't do that, and it's difficult. I get it, but I mean, it's all about consistency. That's what it boils down to, at least for me. It's just taking that gut check and then keep going.
No, I totally hear
It's
you.
obvious.
There's a great and very wise philosopher named Mike Tyson who had a great quote about consistency, and he's saying I think he was asked like, what does it mean to be a champion, to be great? He's like, greatness comes when you find a way to love the things you hate to do. And I was like,
Wow,
it's pretty powerful.
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Will got some good stuff on it too. He's like disciplined. Jocko, right?
oh, absolutely,
The
yeah.
military guy. Yeah, he's got discipline equals freedom, all that stuff. So I think
It
it's
just
powerful.
it's really true, man. Discipline definitely equals freedom. So, in kind of wrapping up, let me ask you a few more questions and kind of get you going. And again, for those who are listening, I'm dropping Casey's LinkedIn profile, so be sure to give him a follow. But Casey, let me ask you this. Let's take a moment, because again, being in sales and medical sales, like it feels very very much like a lone wolf thing, but you didn't get to where you are by yourself. You had a lot of help. So take this moment, like who do you want to thank? Both in your job and outside, whether it was like supporting your personal life and everything. Who helped you have that year?
Yeah. I think my dad definitely. My dad's in the industry, and he understands the inner workings of it, and he's taught me so much about not only how to be successful in this industry, but how to be successful in life. Um, my dad, nothing was given to him, early on. He had a pretty tough childhood, and he worked for everything that he got. And I think he instilled a lot of those skills into me, along with humility throughout the process. And I really thank him for instilling all of that in me, because I wouldn't be where I'm at today without the lessons that he taught me, and um, the discipline that he's also instilled in me to get things done, and to be successful. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, Ali Lucchetto, my manager, she's absolutely awesome. She's, one of my idols in the sense of she gets things done, plain and simple, and she knows how to get things done efficiently and quickly. And, she's been in this industry for a really long time and has proven herself time and time again um, as a territory manager and now an AD. So I want to thank her for pushing me and continuing to put in the work with me to become a better rep. And then also Omar, you too. Matthew, Ray, Scott, Stu, Brandon. I consume your guys' content like crazy, and I think early on, The nuggets that you guys are dropping for free, I think, are so valuable. And just like we've been saying this whole podcast, it's listening to it, but also putting it into practice, right? Like it's easy to take in all of this, golden information, but at the end of the day, putting it into practice and actually executing on these things that you're learning is what's going to make the difference. Yeah, I think, all of those people have really helped me, learn about this industry and be successful. And I still have a really long way to go to become a better rep, and I'm excited to get there. But thank you to all those people for sure.
That's awesome, man. And hey, look, I appreciate it. I mean, I'll say it from my perspective. I mean, part of the reason why I podcast and blog is that I love mentorship and I like to teach people what I know so that you guys can succeed and not have to make the mistakes that I made. But the best
Right.
way to pay me back is just take action on my advice. So it makes me very happy to hear that. So very, very much an honor to hear that. So I appreciate that.
And rate and review Omar's podcast.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. If you're listening, if this is even the second episode you've listened to this podcast and you haven't given me a 5-star review, shame on you. Go do it right now.
Yeah.
You're taking food off my table. No, I'm joking. So, couple of more other questions for you is that like Comet is a fantastic organization. It's world renowned, but for the people who are, there's a lot of really talented reps who are either interviewing at ConMed or considering working there. Like what do you love most about working for ConMed?
Oh, the culture. People say that about all of their companies. I understand it's pretty cliche, but the company culture is just unmatched. Every single rep that I reach out to, all the, vets and even, people that just kind of started are all very like-minded to me and all kind of think the same. We're all passionate about what we do. We're all passionate about the products that we sell. We all have the same mission. Um, and it's competitive too. All these reps are hungry and want to get after it and want to walk on the stage at the end of the year. And we all push each other to do just that. So when you see your buddy's name at the top of the leaderboards and you're a little bit below them, you're fired up just to get to exactly where they are, and they're not going to let up on the gas at the end of the year either. So it's just a really cool, competitive, collaborative, exciting company culture. We've got a bunch of new products coming out too, which is super exciting. And it's always moving. Things are always changing, and you feel really supported too as a new rep, especially. Our training and development team is rock solid, and they make you feel, just like we talked about earlier, like you're studying every night, after that first week, and you feel ready to go once you get in the field. But love ConMed for more specifically the culture and the people that you work with.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, great, man. Well, in wrapping up, I'm going to kind of do something different with at least this President's Club series, but I'm going to allow you can ask me one question, any question you want. It can be about anything. It doesn't have to be about med skills, but what question do you have for me?
Okay. I want to spin it back to you. I want to ask, and you said you were going to probably do a podcast on this, but now I'm genuinely interested. What were some of the mistakes that you made when you were a rep, kind of first starting off? And when did you become a rep? So you went to medical school, right?
Went to medical school in Texas.
And then you became right after that?
No, I actually did door-to-door sales for a collection agency, and I had to break into the industry. And of course, I was told the same thing everybody else was told. It's like, oh, you got to start out selling disposables or like work at a random distributor. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. But these rules that people tell you, they're all nonsense rules. They're made up. They're all rules until you break them. Exactly. Yes. So I started out.
Learned a lot.
Oh yeah, you definitely. Dude, I was doing door-to-door sales in the Texas heat in a suit, calling on doctors' offices in my hometown. Do you know how humiliating that was? It was really humbling because like after I got spit on and like insulted by the front desk, and then they realized who I was, and they're like, oh, it's either like, oh, you're Dr. Khateeb's son, or like, oh, you're the hometown boy who went to medical school. Then doctor come out and be like, hey, like, do you start residency? What's going on? And then I had to like explain how I like left and everything. And then it's like, well, so can I talk to you about this product? That was great. Right. That was really, yeah. Right. So yeah, super humbling. So I started off as a rep in at Missouri Robotics. So I made a lot of mistakes. I should do a whole episode on all the mistakes I made. Cause like, you know, and I was mentored by like legends in our industry. So Christopher Prentice was a CEO of Missouri Inc. at the time. And Chris Sells was another legend. These are all people who came out intuitive. And I think because I pissed them off on like different weeks and it wasn't the same week, I kept my job probably. But I'll tell you like one of the, I'm trying to think. I mean, I definitely got like kicked out of a room because I didn't know what I was doing. And my manager had to take over. But I think like, I'll tell you something like a really big lesson. And I would say that the reason why I've achieved the level of success that I've had today, and I've still got a long ways to go, but just starting my company, my like a lot of my success can be credited to this one moment. When I left Missouri Robotics, you know, it was right before Medtronic was acquiring them, you know, so my job got dissolved. I was offered a opportunity to stay, but it was at that point I wanted to leave and try something new. So I was 27 or 28 years old, so I was still pretty young. And Chris Prentice, who's the CEO of Missouri Inc., which is the US division, was my boss for a little bit, but then like as the company grew, like I didn't report to him directly. So I went to his office and I set up like an exit interview with him. And I sat down and talked to him. And this guy, we're very good friends now. I'm very honored the fact that he's at Harmonic Bionics, an awesome robotics company. So he actually approached me to help them with a few things, which is a huge honor. When somebody you look up to or somebody who mentored you comes to you professionally, like that's a big deal. You should not take that for granted. So, but anyways, so I sat down with him and I had two questions. So the first question I asked him was like kind of a fluff question, like, hey, what am I really good at? You know, gave me some, he's like, you know, you're really good at this. And the second question was the most important one. The quality of questions you ask will reflect the quality of life and career you have, right? And we don't ask questions that hurt us. Pain is very important, you know. You know, like like sometimes like you know, I joke with my wife, it's like she's like how's your day going? I was like pain, you know, like because a lot of times the things we run away from, actually this is going to be very philosophical, so I'm going to tell you what that thing was. Actually, I'll tell you what it is, and I'm going to get very deep and metaphysical with you. And again, you asked a very good question. So when I asked him, I was like, hey, Prentice, I was like, and I remember I practiced this question because I was so nervous. This man, at least for a 27-year-old guy, West Point graduate, CEO, very sharp, like scared the hell out of me. So I practiced this question. I said, Prentice, I want you to pretend, this is exactly what I told him. I was like, I want you to pretend that I'm somebody you deeply care about, like I'm like a nephew or your son. Okay. So that was the first part that was hard for me. I was like, what's something that I'm either really bad at or not doing that makes you really worried about me for my career? And then I just sat back and just shut my mouth. And I didn't, and there's a temptation to explain more, but I just shut my mouth. And without even thinking about it, he's like, I'll tell you what it is. He's like, you have a lot of great ideas, Omar, but you don't have enough action. And he like hit me hard. He's like, you know, this is the thing I keep explaining to you, Omar. He's like, that's why when we talk about marketing, it's about blocking and tackling. Nobody cares about these ideas. What's important is action. And I can't even replicate what he said, but it hurt me so badly. Like it was so painful for me to listen to that I went home and I meditated on that. And from that day forward, every time I read a book, every time I just had his voice in my head saying, like, how are you going to take action on that? And because of that, I took action on all kinds of things that elevated my career. I took bigger risks. I had things fail and blow up in my face. But because of that, I just kept taking action. I stopped caring about what people thought. And as a result, that's what kind of gave me breakthroughs in terms of like things that the industry's never done. So I was the first growth marketer, head of growth marketing in our industry. I was the first to set up a podcast, first to do a lot of things. Not all of it worked, but a lot of it did work. And it's because of that ability just to take action. And something I'll kind of wrap things up with is, you know, if we think about like mythological things like dragons, for example. Like there's dragons hoard gold, right? Why is that, right? Why, like mythologically, what the hell does a dragon? What does it have to do with gold? And the reason why is that from a mythological perspective, the dragon is a symbol of the things that we fear, the things that we do not want to look at, we want to run away from. But if we are able to face those things and embrace the pain, the discomfort, the treachery of it, all these things, and we defeat it, we get gold. And so the things that we most want to run away from, that make us really uncomfortable, that expose our insecurities, our weakness, and everything, if we're able to face those things and triumph over them, you will move up a level in this world or simulation that we live in. That's the biggest lesson, you know? And I'm sure this year for President's Club, there were a lot of dragons that you faced that you could have easily run away from, but you faced them and embraced it and slayed those dragons, right?
100%. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's just seeking out those uncomfortable positions and going into the unknown. I mean, you could fall flat on your face, but at the other end, you know, you could be wildly successful, and you don't know unless you take that shot. So, I mean, we've all heard that, you know, a bunch of times, but it's about executing it and, you know, stepping your foot in the deep end and, you know, figuring it out.
Absolutely. Well, awesome question, Casey. Thank you so much for spending time with us. There's been another episode of the State of MedTech. Be sure to give Casey a follow. Check the link in the show notes below, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks.
Thank you for enjoying another epic episode of the State of MedTech. If you're feeling inspired and love this episode, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you never miss an episode. And be sure to give us 5 stars and write a short review, because that helps more people discover this amazing community of ours. If you're a company who has a executive that you'd like to be on the show, or perhaps you want to sponsor one of the episodes, shoot us an email at hello@khateebandco.com. Take care, and we'll see you next time.